welcome to the Vetly Speaking Podcast, your home for insightful conversations, support, and resources designed to help navigate through life's challenges. I'm so glad you're here, and I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen. I'm really excited to take this journey at this moment in my life. And I want to take a moment to share why I started this podcast and what it means to me. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with viral meningitis, and the illness affected my nerves, my brain, my eyes, my balance. I spent 2 years in rehab and taking time to get back to optimum health, whatever that means. And eventually, deciding that it was time to hang up the uniform. Decision, frankly, I wasn't ready to make. Ready as in, I saw myself going further in my military career. As a veteran, recently retired after 25 years plus in the United States Air Force, the greatest force, Air Force. I understand the unique challenges we face when transitioning from military to civilian life. Many of us struggle with finding purpose, building new identities, and navigating the complexities of everyday life after service. I've started this podcast afraid, but I'm doing it anyway. So this podcast is dedicated to creating a space where veterans, their families, and anyone facing similar transitions can come together to share their stories, find support, and gain practical insights through engaging conversations with guests who have walked similar paths and on various topics. The goal is to provide valuable resources and strategies that can help listeners. Whether you're seeking advice on employment, mental health, or personal, professional growth in leadership, education, I truly hope that this podcast serves as a guiding light in your journey. And so, without further ado, I am so excited, as I dive in. The first part of this special two-part series is we're really kind of diving into the art of transition. It's near and dear, it's fresh to me since I just recently retired. So I thought I could just dive into this conversation of finding purpose. And again, in this episode, we're going to explore the challenges of not only discovering what comes next, whatever that may be, but also reintegrating into society after years of military discipline and routine. The conversation will touch on to include the pursuit of like employment. Not everyone can afford to retire completely when they're done, when they take the uniform off. So, with that, I am thrilled to welcome a dear friend to be my very, very, very first guest on this podcast, Scott Walker. Sorry, Scott Stalker. I didn't really mean to mess up your name there. I know your name.
Hey, my last name's easy. It's just like the federal crime.
The Stalker. I know, right?
The stalker's not walking anywhere. It's all good. It's all good. That's the beauty of this is you're showing that mistakes are possible.
Absolutely.
And that was such a minor one. Yeah.
It is, but I do. It's Scott Stalker. And Scott served on active duty as a Marine for 31 years with duty in variety of different places from Somalia, Albania, Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan. He's held strategic leadership positions at Marine Corps Forces Special Operations Command. He's a cyber, I call him the cyber guy. He's a cyberspace command. He's also currently this guy does everything. What is it you don't do, Scott? He is a senior fellow at the National Defense University and now runs his own company at S2, Stalker Solution, LLC, which is pretty much focused on national security and leadership team development. What I love about his bio is that I feel like he has found his niche at an extension of what he used to do while in uniform. So I think that's pretty cool. I mean, you can't knock him for that, right? So
Yeah.
Scott, thank you for joining me today.
DD, thank you. If I were to bet early on going in who is going to get whose last name wrong, I would have gotten yours wrong. So So I'm one up on you already, right? And it's all good. It's all good because we're friends, and that's it's fine. But if anyone's trying to spell my last name, it is spelled just like the federal crime.
Yeah,
Hey, can I say a few things real quick, Dee Dee?
absolutely.
I want to
Floor is
commend
yours.
I want to commend you for really modeling what courage looks like, because your illness was significant, and as we talked about this previously, in calls prior to this podcast, I know how you struggled with your vocabulary and speaking, and that led to lack of confidence and other things. And so it makes no sense at all for you to do a podcast, and
Mm.
you're still attacking that hill anyways. And so I commend you for that. And I would offer as well that your voice is needed. We need to hear your voice. The veterans need to hear your voice. America needs to hear your voice. The audience needs to hear your voice. And at the end of the day, success is going to be if one person someday reaches out and says, "Thank you for your podcast. I enjoy listening to it." So thank you for having me on to be your first guest, which, first of many. I'm confident you're going to have many guests, many great guests. There's one, I won't say that individual's name, but I know the goal you have. And I look forward to watching that episode with that individual on there. If I may also as well say both happy birthday to my Marine brothers and sisters and happy Veterans Day to you
Hoorah.
and all the veterans that are out there. Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Happy
Right.
birthday, Marine Corps.
There you go.
No, thank you so much for the kind words. I know that it's funny enough, Scott and I met in 2000, if you remember, in 2021. I was maybe 3 months into my new role
It's
in
in Belgium, right?
Germany. Yeah, we
Yep.
met in a conference in Belgium. And I remember our first conversation. I think, and I it's in my head. It was 15 minutes long, but it had a lasting impression on me. And eventually we connected, right? We had this you mentored me, you gave me advice. You did a very good job, in just inspiring me, because again, I felt like a fish out of water in that position, because I was surrounded by all these great senior leaders, and I wanted to be like you guys when I grew up. But you pulled me aside and you gave me that pep talk, and you gave me your coin, which I still have placed right here. And so thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Absolutely. When we get opportunities, as my late mentor told me, when you get opportunities and you're put in a position of seniority or leadership, reach back occasionally, often,
Yeah,
and help others out. And
absolutely.
I get more out of that than anything. I often would tell people if I'd go to an event, hey, I don't want a gift, I don't want an award. I tried to sneak out of my retirement without a medal. You can ask protocol. I was adamant I didn't want anything.
Yeah,
And to what charges me, what energizes me is really helping others and then seeing them succeed.
yeah,
That's great. So I
I
look
agree.
forward to all your success.
I agree. And talking about success, right, is when you started your transition
Hmm.
journey, I followed your detailed transition account on LinkedIn. You did a very good job in laying out a play by play to your transition from your VA process. I remember I would go in every morning and I said, I wonder what he's doing today, from your VA process of starting your own LLC to just your health. That I remember the advice you gave for insurance, the advice you gave for healthcare. I mean, that was pretty detailed, which I liked, right?
Yeah.
So when it was time for me to plan this topic, I couldn't think of anybody else, because one, you just took the uniform off, so it's not like the information that you shared was very relevant. It's still very relevant, right? And so you are the first person I had in mind, and that's why you're here.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into this subject because it's never going to get old, but it's always going to evolve. You know,
Absolutely.
and there's always going to be someone else preparing. And I really think this gets to what I loved about being a senior enlisted leader. It's for officers and enlisted. It's for all of us, and I help the entirety of the tribe, regardless of their rank. So hopefully, those will be the much of the constituent of your listeners.
Yeah. Anyway, and I hope so too, because like I said, even though we all have, you think of transition, you're like, how many times can somebody spin transition, right?
Right.
With each individual, it's so individual. You can cut them so many different ways. It means different things to different folks, right? And so the more voices you hear about transition, you can try to attach your own unique experience to that individual, right? So, reflecting on your time, what was the most significant challenge you encountered? How did it reshape your understanding of your own identity beyond the uniform?
And initially, so I never asked to retire. I never applied to retire. I never requested retirement. And so for me, and let me just frame this. I know that I am not in some ways normal. And I mean that in a positive way, but I am an over the top driven individual. And I was going to medical when I got a phone call from one of the greatest individuals to ever wear the uniform, our former SEAC, senior enlisted advisor to the chairman, not to use acronyms here, CZ, affectionately known as CZ. And he called me and let me know that I was done. Not in a negative way. He wasn't like, say, he wasn't giving me the "you're fired" routine, but I had competed for an opportunity, didn't get the opportunity. Totally fair competition. I'm not speaking negatively about that, but I didn't get it. Right. And so a decision was made, and I had just done 2 combatant commands. So there wasn't, I wasn't going to be doing 3. That would have been ridiculous. And I wouldn't have accepted it if given. So I think the hardest part for me was accepting that it's over, because I had literally signed up to be a Marine when I was 16. I finished high school a year early and enlisted at 17. And from 17, and in a few months, I'll be 50. That whole time has been, whether you want to say, I heard the terms, hey, you're incarcerated or you're indoctrinated. But either way, I was in the machine of being a Marine. And it wasn't that, and granted I have short hair still, but it wasn't that they tell you what to wear, when to wear it, where to go and all. It wasn't that. But that was my identity, and I didn't know what was next. And so I knew once I got that call that I needed to take a moment and think, and not overreact, but think and really think about, okay, what does Scott look like in 15 years? And that's how I do things, is I try to go out 15 years, at least 5 years, and then work backwards to model that. And so I started thinking about, what did I want to do? And I didn't know. I only knew what I did not want to do. I did not want to work in a cubicle again. I did not want to work for the government again. And again, nothing negative with those things. That just was not for me. And so the hardest part really was just acceptance. Yeah. And once I did accept it, something clicked one day, and I got so excited. I was like, oh my goodness, you're telling me that I can do anything I want, work as hard or as little as I want, live anywhere I want, wear whatever I want, grow a beard, not grow a beard. And I experimented with all of that. Take as much time as I want. You literally can, it's all yours. Yeah. And so I just went into deep planning and thinking, reaching out to mentors and starting the networking process. I had already been networking quite a bit. And then really just getting an idea of who are the people that I like to be around. What are the individuals in certain work, whether they're coaching, speaking, leading, businessmen or women, like all those are the people I started talking to. And I got an idea of what I want to do. And ultimately, that long-term plan for me is I'm working to build an empire. And I don't have any qualms of saying that, but I'm working to build that empire. And I'm on about month 10 of that. I retired January 31st, and I'm working my way through all that. And so I think it'll vary for everybody, but for me, it was acceptance of the fact that I'm done.
Yeah.
Again, I still have served had that option existed, but I got the call. And of all the people that I was in uniform still with, that was the person I'm most proud that called. I'm glad that it was him because the one thing with CZ is and I love him to death again, but he's frank and to the point.
Yes.
I didn't need a speech about how great I was or any of this garbage. Get to the point, let's go, and then I can move on and start thinking about what's next.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Your story is so I felt like such a failure when I got, it's not that I caused myself to be sick, but right. I felt like such a failure. And when I knew, just like you, I wasn't, not that I wasn't ready, because the people I usually mentor, I always tell them, once you hit 20, every year you should always assume that that's your last.
Yeah.
And because That's our numbers 20. And I went to Germany to develop for future endeavors. And you talk about CZ. He's a great mentor, and he's mentored me for as long as I can remember. And I remember talking to him before I even took that position. And he helped prep me for my interview for that position. So, in going to work there and not completing it the way I saw it, I
Yeah.
was so messed up mentally. It really messed me up. And I found myself isolating myself. I almost felt embarrassed as well. Like, what happened to me here? One, I can't run. I can't even walk without assistance. I can't speak well. Like, what is happening to me, right? When I eventually got to a place where I was somewhat healthy, I remember my husband took me on a trip. We went to Milan, and it was on a train. Just like you, I looked at my husband and I said, you know what? I'm done.
Yeah.
I think it just dawned on me. I said, I am done. And I felt this sense of peace for the first time in a year.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm done fighting to come back to full duty. I'm done.
Yeah.
And my husband looked at me and said, are you sure? I'm like, I'm done. There is so much peace with that. When I was listening to your interview with Joanne,
Yeah.
and she talked about the fact that when people ask her, say, hey, she says she loves retirement. I got to tell you, there's so much joy in retirement. There's so much freedom, right?
Yeah.
That you didn't have. Just like you, this is all I've done. Wearing the
Yeah.
uniform was all I did as an adult. I had no other job prior to that. That was the military was all the job I had. And to see it end, and if I tell you till this day, I never had a retirement ceremony.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
It's not because people didn't want to, but it just was one of those things where I still had to deal with it mentally that, you know what, I'm not ready for a retirement ceremony. So
Yeah.
even though I'm happy that I'm out, I never got myself ready for that place yet, to have that retirement ceremony. I will have like some kind of party at some point,
Yeah.
but I told myself when I'm ready, I'll do it. And I'm doing it because it's my time. This is the first time I get to do something on my own time,
Yeah.
right? Not on the government's time. But yeah, that I struggled. I really did struggle with that. And I'm so glad you said, you provided such profound insight because many veterans struggle with transition of their military experience into civilian terms. So, can you share a specific moment when you felt the weight of that challenge? How did that experience force you to reevaluate your skills and the value you bring to the civilian force?
I'm going to answer that. I'm going to rewind momentarily to touch on something else. I don't know that I've shared this before, but in 2010 is when I got selected and frocked and put on Master Gunny. So I wore E9 for a long time.
Okay.
About 2 years into that, I experienced some severe back pain in my L5S1 area. And I was
Mm-hmm.
serving in the special ops community at the time. And the initial doctors, they were giving me these pills. And for whatever reason, that was the solution. These pills, I won't give the name, but most people would know what they are, basically put me in a state where I felt like I was watching my life. I was drug induced and I was sleeping ungodly hours. Like I was waking up at 10. I was
Mm.
the intelligence chief for the organization. And I felt that I had failed the Marine Corps, my rank, and my boss who hand selected me for that job. And so I went
Mm-hmm.
in about 2012, 2013, and I said, I've got to retire. I went through the entire transition course and I was ready to retire until I met a medical individual who helped me get into fitness and weight training. And I really rejuvenated myself and I stayed in the Marine Corps. My point in bringing that up is you had mentioned you went through some illness and some issues. We all go through various stages of life and phases of life. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we've got to meet that right person in our life to show us a different path. And had I not met these other medical professionals, I might have been 10 years into retirement by now and doing something else. So who knows? Who knows? But I think the only thing you can do is every day put your boots on, give it your best, try to help others, surround yourself with positive people, and then you just don't know. I mean, Dee Dee, it's heartbreaking that you got this illness. I have no idea how you get that illness, why you got that illness, why I never got that illness. Like, I don't know, but you only thing you can do is make the best of it now. And that's what you're doing.
Correct.
And that's great. Now, I do hope you do have some kind of ceremony, but I would also offer that ceremonies can be over the top. And mine was absolutely incredible, remarkable. I'm blessed that it was, but it was way over the top. It was just ridiculous. But I appreciate it.
Well, deserving after 30 years, right?
Well,
I mean,
and I realized that it was more than just about me. And
yeah.
I don't like to say that because it puts me on some kind of pedestal in my own mind, and I like to stay grounded. But I understand why it was what it was. But I will tell you this: I was very happy, as great as it was, when I woke up the next day. Something happened.
Yeah.
The grass smelled greener and more freshly cut. The
Amen,
sun
brother.
shined in my face a little better. It was just something incredible. And there's not a moment of my service that I regret. I love every minute of it. I'm so proud of that. I'm proud of who I served with, you and others, but I'm also proud of this. And I think you can have both. And so, to your question, was there a moment? Was there something that really broke it in for me? I think what happened was when I started getting some of the medical things done, because I had delayed that really my whole career. Honest to goodness, I have never been sick my adult life, not one day. I've never been sick since I had chickenpox at the age of 7. So I don't have a lot of those things. I have, I've served in combat and had, different events. I'm not a war hero or nothing. Never been shot. Don't have a Purple Heart. But when you're in those environments, you whether explosions or whatever, you're around those. And so as I started going through the medical, I was stunned. And this is why everyone needs to start early. How I would get one thing looked at and it would lead to 3 other appointments. And that would require a specialist who would require 2 other appointments. And so I quickly started thinking, oh my goodness, I'm starting this so far out. I'm not going to have enough time to do it. And I ended up having enough time. And so anyone listening, maybe you never had a sick day like me. Maybe, you think everything's great. Okay. Still start your medical early, and your dental and your vision and your hearing, like all of this, because inevitably you're going to have an appointment canceled because the specialist can't make it. And another time you're going to have to get called in to work for something, and yada, yada. You need the time. You need the time. The VA needs the time. And you need to understand that any issue you have at the age of 30, 40, 50 will not get better at the age of 60, 70, or 80. And that's why you got to get it done. So I think, it was really on the medical side, because I had felt like some kind of super being. I don't get sick. And I'm blessed. But then I had, oh my goodness, months and months and months of medical requirements. And then when you go on your terminal leave, right, then you start doing the VA things as well to validate and certify all of those things so that they can give you a percentage on your VA disability. So the medical piece, I think, is the one area that I would say to answer your question.
Yeah, and again, for me, it's funny because I went through my military career. I probably would say maybe me having the twins, that's probably where, I have like the most of my record, but I had like literally one thin record. Then when I got sick, I literally went from, because I was going to the clinic every week.
Yeah.
I was admitted for 3 months. And then I lived out of the TBI clinic because of my traumatic brain injury. And I would go every week. I stayed in the Fisher House. Shout out to the Fisher House at Longstuhl. They became my family. They were amazing at helping me with my whole therapy session, because I had every therapy you could think of: speech, occupational, everything, right?
Yeah.
And for the first time, I think for me, when I go back to my VA experience, and we should always talk about that later, but
Yeah.
I had a great experience because it was so recent. And so all my documents were just there, right?
Yeah.
It was so easy. I didn't have to go dig in for anything. It was so recent. And so when I saw the VA, they were like, oh yeah, we see it. We see it. We see it. We see it. I was literally getting all my referrals like every other week. And so, yeah, you're right. I think is documentation and keeping up with all of that, right?
Yeah.
And more importantly, there's no shame, because you just don't know what's going to happen to you. I was a healthy person just like you, I mean, I used to pride myself in having like that fit run. I would run and work out and lift weights. I
Yeah.
went from that to I couldn't even walk to the bathroom on my own.
Yeah.
And so
No,
without
that's, I can't imagine. I
without
can't
my
imagine.
husband helping, holding my hand, or even make a full sentence. A
Yeah.
public speaker. I love public speaking, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think before we even had this segment, I talked to you and I told you, I said, I am nervous. I have never been nervous about speaking in public
Yeah.
or ever talking, in this format. And I told you, I said, I'm not going to go live with this podcast. I'm not ready yet because it's something I would have easily done, right? I'd had to learn how to talk all over again.
Yeah.
But you know what? I really did have support just like you. I had amazing support. It was just unfortunate that the injury I had required long-term care. And when you are at that high level, as the senior leader in your command, it's really hard to be absent for such
Yeah.
a long period of time because I even started to feel very guilty. Our job was to take care of our folks, right? We're
Right.
supposed to take care of everybody and think of ourselves last, but having to be selfish for 2 years straight, I had this huge guilt. I couldn't do it anymore.
I
It
totally
wasn't
understand that.
fair. It wasn't fair to everybody else, and it was just time to go,
Yeah.
and it
I
was
totally
okay.
understand that there's a pressure we put on ourselves that I take great pride in that pressure and that stress because it means that we believe in upholding the highest standards, and so
Absolutely.
there's
Yep.
greatness in that. But the reality is, when you're at that level, there's rarely someone that you can turn to for. But what I was getting at was, your medical situation, precepted by the fact that you had twins, which is not a small thing. Those are significant events, and then the long term health care of yourself. So um, others could have combat injuries. That who knows? But the one thing we all have to go through is the
Yeah.
medical piece, and starting that early is important. What job we get on the outside or don't get, whether we go to school or we don't, that all those variables
Yeah.
change. But the medical piece, even if you did 4 years, you got to get that done and taken care of, so that later, if needed, the VA can take
Yeah.
care of you.
It's important. So
Yeah.
I'm going to pivot here, right? Because obviously you
Okay.
started, you went out and you started your own business with S2.
Hmm.
So, what specific experience or realization motivated you to pursue that path, right? You could have done anything, right? When I mean you guys, senior leaders, yourself, Joe, CZ, at that height, when you guys leave, I like to see you guys as very employable because of the leadership experience that you guys have. So, what made you go start S2?
I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but I never want to work for anyone
Mm,
ever again. I want to be in control of my own destiny. And that's scary because it's not
mhm.
guaranteed. However, there are a tremendous amount of opportunities out there. Whether you look at those as financial opportunities to make an insane amount of money, 7, 8 figures, you name it, all of that is there. But what I really appreciate is the opportunity to design my own path, to compete in this ecosystem of defense contracting, national security, leadership, those areas. And as I see others do it, and many who are very good, I don't see anyone doing it in a way that I can't do it as well, or if not better. Again, not trying to be an arrogant individual here, but I have this idea and this plan where I'm going to put things out there and I'm going to compete ultimately with the goal to hire veterans. I want to get to a place where I hire veterans and spouses. And I also want to get to a place where I'm doing financially so well that I can give a lot of money to
Yeah,
veteran charities that are out there
that's good.
as well. It is. And right, so it's not, listen, I'm wearing Skechers shoes right now. I've got a Wounded
Oh,
Warriors t-shirt on that was given to me. So I don't need to spend, this isn't all about money for me. Um, but I am going to make a lot of money because I'm going to do this to help others. I'm going to help my daughters I have 3 young daughters that are going to get a high quality education. My wife, I want her well taken care of. Not if I die, but when I die, right? This is an inevitability that's going to happen. And so preparing
Yeah.
all of that. And I want to, like I talked about, build that empire. And it takes a lot of work. But the thing is when I'm in my office or on the airport, on the plane, whatever, grinding away and working, it's a return on investment. I'm working for myself. I'm building
Yeah.
things for myself. Granted, I do consult for a few companies right now. And the ones that I do, I genuinely love. They're led by great people doing great work. And so I'm trying to bring them business
Yeah.
in as well. But ultimately, I want to do this on my own. And the things I get to do at the National Defense University as a senior fellow, that is, in many ways, that's just dessert, because that's me leading once a year the Keystone course, which is that senior
Mhm.
E9 course. That's me keeping my clearance, staying engaged, and
Right.
giving back. And yes, they do pay me for that, but it allows me to stay current with our group of
Right.
peers,
Yeah.
if you will. And so I love doing that as well. And so it really, it just comes down to, what do you want to do? What are you comfortable with? It would have been very easy for me to get a government job and do the 40 hours a week. And in many ways, sometimes I think to myself, man, maybe why didn't I do that? I would have had so much time to do other
Yeah.
things. But I can't operate that way. I can't. It's too slow. It's I would have been working for a major or a gunny or so. I can't do that again. I just cannot do it. And so I have to do it on my own. And I want to
Yeah.
fail on my own, which allows me to learn on my own and build it on my own. Now, when I say on my own, that's not entirely true, because I have a lot of people helping me out. My good friend, my current boss, Audie, I reach out to Todd Simmons. Like, there's a lot of veterans at Mike
Yeah.
Quinn, like a lot of people out there who I reach out to often to get business advice, different advice. And so I have a lot of help. But at the end of the day, I got to put in that sweat equity as well. And so that really just comes down to, what do you want to do? And everything I'm doing can be done. And everything that I want to do has been done in terms of success and financial and all these other things. And so that's why I know I'm going to be successful and do that and hire veterans, because it can be done. And I want to do that as well. If Boeing and Lockheed and Mantech and all these other companies exist, there's no reason why I can't build that
Yeah.
from the ground up
Yeah.
and be just as successful.
Yeah.
So
It's starting somewhere.
it's a gamble.
Yeah. It is.
It's a gamble,
It's a
but
gamble,
I like it.
and it's passion, right? I mean, you figure you've done. Think of all the jobs you held in your military career. You didn't like every single one of them, and we are never on our own time. When you wear that uniform, your time is not your own. Don't ever get deceived. Even when you go on leave, it's not your own, because the moment they call on
True.
you, you better jump. And when you're done,
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing, right? I mean, I'll be honest, right? I was like, okay, you know what? I want to go back to work. We're going to dive into that here very soon. But when you're looking in, I mean, I've applied for 20 jobs through USA
Yeah.
Jobs and gotten 0 interviews. I think I got 3
Right.
referrals. And that is when I told myself, I'm like, what are you doing, Didi? Like, you have,
Yeah.
you had dreams when you were a kid. You had dreams while you were in. What are you afraid of doing? I never saw myself doing my own business. Just like you, I started this. The Vetly Speaking podcast falls under a platform, my media platform, Vet Speak Media, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I was a
Yeah.
kid, I wanted to be in broadcasting, right? I wanted to do journalism when I was a kid. I remember that in 10th grade in my school when I was in Nigeria, because obviously I'm first generation American, Nigerian American. I started a press club, and I remember I had that passion. And so I thought to myself, it just dawned on me. One day I was taking a walk. I may come up with my finest ideas when I walk. And I said, you know what? I'm
Me
like,
too.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I registered Vet Speak Media LLC. I was so proud. I don't know what it was. I felt like a kid. I was like, "Oh my God, I have this. Look at it. Look at my certificate." And it's been the most rewarding, because it's like, okay, fine. No one is opening the door for me. I'm gonna make up my own door. Ultimately, and
Yeah.
that's kind of where I am with with that. Now, do I know what I'm doing with the business? It's just like I started out with this podcast. I don't know what I'm doing, but do it anyway, right? It's do it
Yeah.
afraid. There's nothing there because everyone that has done this before, I'm sure there's some level of fear, some level of vulnerability and apprehension, but they do it anyway. That's the difference between the people that succeed and the people that don't. And so, good insight because I watch you. You're always gone. You're on the road. You do your public speaking. You're still doing something that you love to do, but in the context of service is what I like about it. Because I think
Okay.
when you get to be E9s like we do, I don't necessarily think you can take out the service away from us. We're always looking as the senior enlisted leaders to do something for others in some way, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's powerful. It says volumes to our pedigree as military people, as veterans.
Yeah. Absolutely. You had the great opportunity to work directly with a lot of our allies over there
Mm-hmm.
with NATO. I have not directly like you did in terms of being stationed there, but I have as well. And they're all really good people. I'm
Yes.
reminded of an individual who was from Estonia who came up to me and he said, Scott, you know what's interesting is when I started my career, Estonia was in the USSR.
Yeah.
And you think about that, like our
Mm-hmm.
history, we sometimes forget. They're a very close ally today, but when I came in, they were a part of the
Yeah.
USSR. So it's something to think about. I love this country. I love our people. I mean, we're going through election season now, and we're going to pick a new leader, and everyone has an opportunity. My voice weighs the same as yours. It weighs the same as a
Mm-hmm.
billionaire or a homeless person. It's the same, and we're gonna see who's gonna move out and be the the face of the nation, if you will. I think there's two things here, right? One is know what you can control, what's in your span of control. And those are the things that I spend my time focusing on. I'm aware of the other things, 7 October, I'm aware of election, but I don't spend my time focusing on those because there's only something I can do. I can vote, then I can get out and I can pay
Or
attention.
you can decide if it really bothers you. And I would love to have on this podcast and talk about those that got out of uniform and ran for office. God bless them.
You
Yeah.
can do that too.
Yeah.
You can do that too, right? I mean, there's a few in uniform that have been elected that I know and
Yeah.
I talk to occasionally today. You can do all of it, and you just have to decide like what is your passion, what do you want to do, and then I think you got to commit. And that's the thing is with business, you can't flirt with this, you can't date this, not if you're going to
I
be
like that term.
successful. Todd Simmons, he would tell me, hey, it can't be a hobby, it's a business. And that means my time, my company requires resources. And if you're going to bring in me or the business or whatever, we have to have a negotiation on cost and those types of things. I don't mean, what you and I are doing right now, or if a sergeant calls me up and asks for some time for advice, but in the world of business, keeping business, and that's something I'm learning and I'm improving in. Much like this podcast is the first one, the second one will be a little better, and the 10th one will be hopefully even better from that. And the same thing is next year, if you were to talk to me, I would be able to give you a lot more insights on business and
Yeah.
being successful. And I would probably talk to you about a couple decisions I made between now and then that were wrong that I had to learn
Yeah.
from. This is life, and embrace it. But again, on this side of things, the beautiful thing about being a veteran is you just really get to choose all of the above. You want to run a podcast, you want to write a book, you want to speak, you want to run a business, you want to be
Yeah.
an employee, you want to do nothing, like go to school, whatever.
Yeah.
It's all there. Commit, develop a plan, commit, and
Yeah.
execute.
I like that. I really do, And so obviously, and you probably touch a little bit on it in your journey, are there any particular resources, networks, or strategies that you found instrumental in that journey?
It's mainly
Amen.
people that I've reached out to that have done this. I had to learn what a cage code was, what a NAICS was. I had to learn all of these other things, what a SDVOSB, like all of these terms, they're business terms that allow you to compete for government contracts, for other
Wow.
things. Now I'm looking at how do I take this on the non-government side and offer my services to corporate America. And then ultimately, I want to look at the legality of doing this internationally. Like, can I offer my services to a foreign country? There's some countries, of
Yeah.
course, I could,
You want to be careful.
Canada,
Yeah.
Australia, whatever, right? But I'm probably not going to go to Moscow anytime soon. So, you know,
We won't let you.
certainly not
Don't
going to.
worry.
But like really exploring all of those things, and so it's I'm on the Small Business Association website last night, and I'm trying to get some paperwork filed and do some things, and I'm frustrated. I make a call to someone. They say, well, just look
Mm,
right here, right? Veterans have done this
amen.
before
There
us.
are a lot of resources out there. Yeah.
Right. Robin Fortner told me this years ago. Your network is your net worth, and so reaching out to those that have done it before, getting advice from them. I've never met any one of them who have steered me wrong or said, no, I'm not going to help you. Even those that know I'm going to compete in that ecosystem. And here's why:
I
there's
was going
enough
to
cheddar
say
for
there's
all of
space
us.
for everyone.
There's space for everyone. And the reason there is because I'm going to do it a little different
Yes.
from others. And they're going to do it different from me. Not right or wrong, just different. And or we could do joint ventures. We can collaborate together. One could be the prime, one could be the sub, right? These are business terms, not to insult the intelligence of the audience, but just breaking down what that means and just
Yeah.
learning
Yeah.
from it. It's genuinely exciting. It's genuinely exciting. It's hard, right? One of the harder things I've found is when I try to do business conversations with those in uniform is I don't always get the callbacks anymore because, we're trying to offer services and I don't want to come across as some sleazy salesman, but we have solutions to things and I got to try to get it in with the right person. So you
Sure.
learn how to do this and to give advice to the audience here, the first book I would tell anyone that wants to get in this business to read is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's the book of all books when it comes to this because the thing you're selling before you're selling anything is trust. They don't trust you. They're not doing business with you, right?
Absolutely.
I don't know, DB. I don't know if you've had anyone reach out to you and offer like financial services or anything like that. They've reached out to me, and I'm not going to any of them because I don't know them. I don't
Yeah.
trust them. I'm not offering. I'm not giving them my money. So you have to sell trust
Absolutely. I
first.
agree. I agree. You said trust. I love it because when you responded, it makes it easy for me to go into the next segment, which we're going to delve into the topic of vulnerability and fear, right?
Uh-oh, here we
Yeah,
go. Deep. Going
So,
deep.
can you recount a moment during your transition when you felt particularly vulnerable? How did you confront that vulnerability? And what did it teach you about resilience and personal growth?
On the 7th of August last year is when I had my
Mm.
ceremony. I had a lot of friends that came in from out of town. We partied, we celebrated.
Where did you have your ceremony
It
at,
was
by the
great
way?
in Colorado Springs, right there
Okay.
at Space Command. Yeah. I wasn't going to travel for this, so did it there. Boom! It was great. It was remarkable. It was huge. But at some point, what I call the definition of success happened, and that was that I saw that I had a successful career because I ended with the team I started with, which was my family. And we walked across we did a naval ceremony where we were piped ashore. I held my daughter's, my wife's hand, and we walked across, and
Mm.
that was it. When I woke up the next day, this is where it hit me, and there was a moment of nervousness, although I had planned it this way. I didn't have a job, I didn't have a home, I didn't have a place to live. We had nothing. I only had my plan and what may be misinterpreted as confidence, and it could have been arrogance, but I knew we were going to be okay because of the network I had built up and the genuine friends I have. Now, there's a little bit of naivete here, and I wouldn't recommend people doing it this way. But we had planned all along to take 5 months off and not do anything,
Hmm.
and so we hopped in the minivan, we packed it up. Literally, we had a roof rack on, like we had everything in that thing, and there were many times where I was a nervous wreck because initially, and I had told people I'm not looking, and so those phone calls weren't coming, and I was worried about a variety of things. And then the first moment happened where my wife was on Zillow and she found the house we wanted, which is now this house now here in the Wilmington, North Carolina area. And so we picked out this house. I flew out here, met with the real estate agent who just happens to be someone I knew and I served with. And we wanted to buy this house. Well, what I did not know is to get a VA loan, you have to have either be on active duty or show 2 years
Mm.
of income. You can't get a VA loan if you own your own company, you
Mm-hmm.
just started. And so I then had to go to someone else I know, John Troxel,
Yeah.
former SEAC, who helped me connect to someone who helped me get expedited and get the VA loan so that I can
Power
buy
of
this house.
network. Power
So
of
there were a
network.
number of power of the network.
Mm.
It really is. So there wasn't a time in uniform where I was concerned because I really believed that I was going to be okay, but I wasn't sure. So I really had to, although I was on terminal leave, I started having to work, and then slowly the calls started coming in to do this and do that, and I had to learn what my hourly rate was. I had to learn like all of these other things as well. But I think that nervous is hit on the 8th of August, not the 7th. The 7th I was still in uniform. The 8th when I started terminal leave and loaded up the family, and we drove up north. We were going to all these national parks, and we were going to enjoy ourselves. Part of me in the back of my head was like, man, this better work because you've got a wife and girl and daughters and you don't have a job. You don't have income. You don't have, and granted I had saved up and been
Right.
wise with my money, but that only lasts so long, no matter
Correct.
who
That's
you
what I
are.
said. Like I
So I
said, it's
was
like we don't have the choice. I mean, unless you won the lottery, you're going to have to do something even after uniform.
right, right. Perhaps if you're dual military, no children, perhaps, if you can cut your expenses, maybe. But I think the other thing that matters more than a job and more than income is
Mm-hmm.
purpose. And so I was never just going to sit on the couch and watch TV all day. That's not a possibility for me. So I wanted purpose, and I started getting opportunities to do different boards, to give back to the Wounded Warrior Project, to the Marine Raider Foundation, other veteran organizations. And that really lifted my spirits because I was getting the offers to do work and make money, and that's nice. And you start seeing more zeros than you're used to. You're like, wow, that's pretty cool. But it doesn't give you purpose. It's not fulfilling. I'm not going to turn it down. Like, you want to throw zeros at me, throw them all day long. I'll take them. But it's not what drives me. It's not to get to Viktor Frankl's book Man's Search for Meaning. It's not delivering purpose. And so once I found purpose on this side, I really felt like things connected and clicked. And I want veterans to
Yeah.
hear this too. I'm 11 months into this. It'll be a year.
January.
Basically one
Mhm.
February. Yeah, end of January. But either way, I don't have it all figured out yet. And there's moments where, I think about the past and I think about times in uniform and I miss it. It's still pretty hard for me to be around people I know or those in uniform and not get called master guns. And I don't ask them to do that. I know why they do that, and that's fine. But I'm working towards this transition, this new identity of being a veteran, a retiree, but a father and a businessman. That's what I want to be known for now, not those other things. So I put all my uniforms away. I put all my medals away. I put all my ribbons away. I'll never touch those again. I left a note in there to my daughters so they know what those mean. And now I want to be the businessman. I want to be the father. I want to be the friend. I want to be the weekend golfer. Like those things that mean something to me. So when we talk about being vulnerable or these other, it's different for each person, right? And you can have panic attacks. You can get nervous. There's been a couple times, and I've had conversations with others about this, where I've been, I can only use the term depressed because I don't know what other term to use. And I remember one specifically, I just finished an event and I came home and I told my wife, I said, man, I just don't feel right. I feel like deeply sad and depressed for, I don't know why. And I went to my room, and actually it was her in-laws, my in-laws, her parents' house. And I slept for about 10 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was. I have no idea. It was gone when I woke up. I was good. I was energized, but it's not a straight line up. You're going to
Mm.
have bumps in the roads where you feel down, you feel sad, you feel happy, you feel glad, you feel inspired. And I think you got to embrace it and have good friends and have a good network to help you get through that. And as you have those conversations with them, you realize whether they're a general, an admiral, or a private, they've experienced similar things too,
Yeah.
and they can help you out. And I think folks like you and I who have experienced a level of seniority, probably never realized how tired we were until you take that off and you take that pack off and you're like, wow, I've been carrying this stress around with me for 31 years. And now, while I do care, I'm not in charge of those individuals and I'm not responsible for their lives in the same way as I once was. And so now I can
Yeah.
rest, which is a
Yeah.
nice thing.
Because that's because we are we never thought of ourselves. I never had a panic attack until September 2023. And I would never
Wow.
forget that feeling. I thought I was dying. To add to whatever I was going through with my recovery, I'm sitting down and I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. And I remember I got so scared, I ran outside. I would never forget it. I ran outside because I was thinking to myself, I said, if something happens to me, I don't want to be, because I think my husband and the kids, um, they went somewhere. I can't remember where, but I ran outside and I said, if anything happens to me, I wanted to happen to me outside and somebody would see me. Right.
Yeah.
And I remember I just ran out and I stood there. I couldn't breathe and I'm panicked. And I think about maybe 5-10 minutes in, my husband then pulls in, and I remember lying. I remember I told him, he's like, "Hey, what are you doing out here?" I said, "I just came to see how cold it was outside." I lied because I was so embarrassed. You know, I would never forget.
Yeah.
And I remember I told him later. I admitted. I said, "Hey, you know what? When I had my second episode the following month, I told him about it." And of course, a
Yeah.
lot of it had to do with just being the trauma of what happened to me. Because again, I was being seen for mental health, but not, it wasn't something that I was taken, or I wasn't referred for it yet. Right.
Right.
I was more
Right.
focused on the physical aspect of my illness, the physical therapy, speech, and all that. And so when I went in, they realized, they're like, okay, you know what, with therapy, I was trying so hard to move forward from the illness as if it was just a regular illness, right? Because somewhere along the line in my mind, I was like, I'm ready to come back on duty. I'm going to do everything I can to get back into the uniform, get back and do my PT and everything else. And I think the pressure, just like you said, you put so much pressure on yourself, you're not sure. And to have that experience, oh my goodness, I was like, what is this? And so I suffered from it. I think I had like maybe about 4 or 5 episodes, um when it was
Yeah.
like the first two were very severe to the point that I froze in place, that kind of feeling. But
I wonder if you put on that facade because we tend to have this image of armor, right? We're
correct.
unbreakable, and so it wasn't so much to use your words that you lied to your husband, but you couldn't possibly be out there for any other reason of weakness, if you will, because
Yeah.
you're a chief,
Yeah.
you're unbreakable. And so you couldn't accept that, and so you gave him another answer, and I think it was honorable to let him know later, and I'm
He
sure he
did.
understood.
He did.
But it's
He
it's
did. I
tough.
told him, I
It's
said,
tough.
I've
Yeah.
never lied to you, babe. You remember that day? Because I told him when I had my third panic attack. That's when I told him, I said, hey, you
Mm.
remember when you saw me outside? I had a panic attack. And he was like, I mean, I remember him holding my hand. He's been my rock through the entire thing, right? And I remember him holding my
Yeah.
hand. But I went through therapy. That's why I think this venue is so important. I say that because asking for help and getting the help I needed, this is not even about medication. I did this, to each his own. Everyone has their own treatment, whatever that is. But talking through my trauma helped tremendously. And I've not had it since then. And I think part of me also doing this podcast, there's a little selfish aspect of me doing it because, one, I get to talk through what happened to me is kind of like a continuum of therapy, if you will. But I'm also helping
Right.
myself on the speech part of therapy. So I'm doing it twofold and also living my passion of journalism in my own way. And so I'm thankful that you shared that story because that's exactly, when we are at that level in our military career, that height, taking care of everybody else, you take on and you suppress your own problems because you're taking care of the airmen, the soldiers, or whatever it is. You're taking care of them. You're thinking of yourself. If you do it right, and you're not just the E9 who is looking for the role
Yeah.
and the power and the authority or whatever that means, you're actually taking care of them, the soldiers, then or the marine or the airman, then you're not thinking of yourself. And then when you eventually stop and you are processing, you're retiring, you now remember, you're like, oh, yeah, me. And that can be scary, even when you have it planned out, I think, in my opinion, even when you have this plan of what it would look like when you transition, when you eventually get there, you do have a lot of
Well,
self-love. You have to almost learn how to love yourself all over again. Not because you don't love yourself. I don't know how to put this. You're like, for the first time, you can actually listen to yourself.
yeah. I know what you mean, and I understand that. This is akin to putting the mask on yourself first
Yes.
in the airplane. I'm also a student of history, and had my transition happened 18 months prior, I don't know where I'd be, because those individuals who did all the planning and prep that I did then experienced a pandemic, and you weren't flying around, you weren't doing certain things, and at the end of the day, Mother Nature gets the ultimate vote, and so you have to deal with the circumstances too. I'm very lucky that when I retired, that was, not that it's over, but it's over, right? We're not going through life right now worrying about, taking a test and this sort of thing. We can physically meet, we can virtually meet. We learned a lot from COVID, but those that retired 2 years prior to me, had different struggles and different
Yeah.
obstacles. They also had different opportunities, because as COVID hit, this virtual world, which the technology was already there, but you had to use it as a forcing function, which is in many ways what you're doing with your podcast. It is forcing you to become a great speaker and a student of journalism, because this is your show now, and you're not going to allow yourself to fail.
Yeah.
So it's a great thing. And oh, by the way, whether you decide to do this live or not, I think you could be successful either way. It's just a matter of, what do you want this to be? And I don't know that it matters too much. Mine, I do live mainly because, one, I don't spend a lot of time doing the editing and everything, but I also want people to be able to see that this facade of a mistake-free, perfect person
Doesn't
is just not
exist. It
reality.
doesn't
And it,
exist.
it doesn't exist.
And like I said, the old Didi would have been freaked out with all the little hiccups that we've had. They're just like, oh my God, it's my first one. And I'm actually truly, I'm not, you know what I mean? But again, it doesn't mean that I'm not. And so when you say that, the facade, but I'm still not ready to go live. I'm like, okay, I think I can do live, but and I will get there. But yes, vulnerability and fear, they're real things, and it's just, again, just like anything else, is connecting with people and finding people that when you're not alone in whatever it is that you're dealing with, somebody else is dealing with something to that effect of what you're going through. And I think that's a powerful statement that people need to remember.
And just like your transition, you should only go live or make this however you want, because you
Yes.
want to.
Mhm.
That's it. If you want to go live, go live. It doesn't make it any better or worse. It makes it you.
I like that. I like that. So, with all this conversation we've been having, what are some of those pressing issues you believe that need more attention in the space of helping veterans transition to civilian life? What do you think still needs to be done? Because I'll be honest, right? Even 5 years ago, the amount of information that's out there, there should technically be no veteran who says, I don't know what to do. I want a house. I don't know what
Yeah.
to do. I want a job. I don't know what to do. I don't know what my healthcare should look like. I don't know what to do. There is, I mean, the VA, the TAP, there's, the organizations, DFW, they're all there, and they are literally like open arms, waiting for you to ask them, hey, I need help, right? So, but what do you think still needs to be done?
Well, when you say pressing issues, there's two right up front, right? We have, and I know when there's one, there's too many, but we have far too many veterans taking their
Yeah.
lives
Mm.
through suicide and then veteran homelessness. For a variety of reasons, we have higher rates of veteran homelessness than the population.
It
That
does.
breaks
Me
my
too.
heart. And suicide. These are tough issues and challenges that there isn't one single solution to, right? It's not, hey, everyone give $1 to this charity and we solve it. Matter of fact, everyone could give $10 to the charity of their choice and it could make zero dent in the
Yeah.
issue. But when we talk pressing, those two break my heart. And so I align myself with organizations that try to get to the left of that and prevent veterans from falling in, and I don't want to say the trap, but to go down that road, right? The road of substance abuse. And I even had to ban myself. I put myself on a 150-day ban from drinking alcohol because I found in the business world and this freedom that I had, this newfound freedom, that not only could I do whatever I want, but I could have a cocktail whenever I want.
Yeah.
And I was having one at noon and two, and that was not good. So I said I put myself on restriction, and had to go there. The same thing with, and I've never had any drugs, but veterans exploring that and where that can lead them, and if they have mental health challenges, how that can exacerbate things, and the next thing you know, they found themselves homeless, or God forbid, dying by suicide. So those two are the ones that are pressing the most.
Mm.
And then when I have conversations with senior members of the VA or other organizations, I try to remember and remind them that we need to be looking at the science, we need to be looking at the data, and we need to be listening to the veterans as to why we're in these situations so that we can put resources, time, and energy to help lessen those. I would love to say make it zero, but I live in the real world and I don't think we're going to get to zero. Would love to, just like I would love to see a world where global peace breaks out. I don't think that's going to happen either. So the real world is, how do we tackle those issues and challenges? Those are the ones that I think are the most pressing. They don't impact me directly. I'm an individual that wants to live a couple thousand years. I
Yeah.
love life.
I'm with you.
It's really, really awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to see what we're going to do in space and where technology is going to go and all of these other things. I'm genuinely excited about it. But with that, I think the other pressing issue is far too few veterans plan this out appropriately. And so they get out, they don't have life insurance, they get 100% VA, and now it's too late, and they can only do VGLI or something like that, and it's expensive.
Yeah.
And so they don't plan this out. They don't have someone that has guided them through this, and then they don't know what they want to do, and so they bought a new vehicle and they bought a new home, and they're in a bit of debt, and they have to take what's available, and that could be doing things back in the military, that could be deploying again or whatever. And I just wish we would use this prefrontal lobe that we have and think beyond tomorrow and think 5 years ahead. If not, a year ahead, but 5 years ahead, 15 years ahead. What do you want to do? And then backwards plan from that and build it. And it can be done. But, in life, some do and some don't. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I wish, which is why I put energy into talking to veterans as much as I can to make sure they're aware of the opportunities and the things they have to do on a timeline, because that timeline could be horizontal. And if you don't get your life insurance by the time you get your VA rating, you may not ever be able to get life insurance except for this one expensive one. If you don't get a VA home loan, all of these things. So being wise about it and knowing that when you get out, like, if you aren't bringing more money into the company than you are being paid, you are probably going to be fired. So knowing what return on investment is, knowing what all of these other things is important. I don't worry too much about these other things about resumes because I'm starting more and more not to think they work. Really don't. I really think it's really your
Yes,
network.
I'm with you. You know,
I don't. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't know anyone. I don't know one single person that has written a resume, applied, one time, and it worked right away. It never works. And I have had people in senior vice president roles call me, ask me to apply to a thing. And early on in my career, because I didn't know what I was going to do, I did. And I never even got a call back. So I'm not focusing on resumes and these other things, which is important. You got to do it. I get it if you're looking for work, but homelessness, suicide, and having purpose and a plan is where I think we need to spend more time talking to our service
Yeah,
members and veterans.
I agree. And like I said, there are people that, sometimes even with the best plan, life happens, things happen. And what, with the question I ask, there, we've given so much to the country that I think, I don't want to say depend on government, but the government can do more for veterans, right? There's still more to be done. Now, there's a lot of things that they've given us. I mean, I know I'm grateful for them, but I think there's a lot more to be done. You talk about the job thing. I mean, people spend more time manipulating their resume just to pass an algorithm. Like I said, I can't even tell you how many hours I'm literally applying for
Yeah.
positions that at some point in my military career I held, and to come back and not get a referral or get a denied or something to that, and I'm just like, you know what? So it almost feels like it's a race to whoever can produce the best 9-page resume, for it to catch all the keywords, for them to look at you and then look and say, and then, man, again, I probably sound naive because I don't want to pretend that I'm in that mix to actually see resumes, but I have applied for positions that I actually held 20, 20. I spent so many hours tweaking my resume, nothing. You get to
Yeah.
a point where if you're not strong, grounded, you didn't plan well, don't have good family support, I can easily see why people would get so frustrated, right? It's not a joke. And it's like, okay, you know what? USA jobs, I've always said, I'm not exactly sure if that's something that needs revamping or the way they should look at things. But if people know when they leave the military, whatever it is they do, that they can do the next thing, whether it's get a job or whether it's the government looking at the way we are taxed. It doesn't have to be state by state. I'm not saying that we should never pay taxes, but you know what? Look, anyone who's done 30 years, 20 plus, 15, 10, you've given so much, you've gone and you deployed, you come back, paying taxes and having that as the priority. Is that a priority? I don't know the answer. I mean, these are just things that I think to myself, right?
Yeah. Well, it's worthy of a conversation, especially given where we're at in
Yeah.
election season. I do want to offer a different way to look at one point you made with Veterans Affairs. So I don't think any of us actually deserve anything. I think we've earned everything. And the reason why I make that distinction is because the American public have voted and decided we need a Department of
Mhm.
Veterans Affairs. So we have that. And then Congress representatives have given them a massive budget to provide services and funding and other things, resources
Mm.
to all of us. This is why I tell veterans to take part in the system and the process, because that is there for us. Our citizens have said, we want a Department of Veterans Affairs. We want to take care of
Mhm.
our veterans. Much like George Washington said something to the effect of, we will have citizens take up arms for her country based on how we've seen her being America, take care
Yeah.
of her veterans. And so if we take care of our veterans, we will have people in the future to say, I will serve because I can see how our veterans were taken care of. So all of the things, whatever you have, whatever I have, those are earned things via the process and the system that we have agreed as Americans that
Yeah.
we should have. Now, it's better than it once
Absolutely.
was, but it needs more work, right? I mean, you talk to Vietnam veterans, it was a disaster. Um, I think it works now, but it also matters who you know. And I wish it wasn't that way. I mean, you go to the website and it's like, oh my God, I
Yeah.
don't know where to start on this thing. It's hard to get VA care. I'm still trying to get different, see people in the VA system for medical. And it's really hard. It's getting better, but it's not, I'm not going to give them a pat on the back yet. We got to keep the pressure on them and keep charging them. So all veterans should be aware of that. But that's, when I hear veterans say, hey, I'm not wounded, or I'm not this, I don't deserve anything. It's if we don't use the system that the American citizen says that she wants with, as America, then we will lose it. And we won't have a Department of Veterans Affairs, because we will say, well, no one needs it unless, you're missing a limb or something like that. So I think it's an important distinction. Is not so much that it's deserved, that it is very much earned, and you have earned all of it.
I agree. But here's where I would also, I would, not to necessarily sound like I give a plug to the VA, because I got to tell you, at one point in my career, I worked MEBs, your medical evaluation boards, and I had, my experience with VA process. They've done and they've moved the needle to the positive column a lot. My VA experience, I know it's not everyone, was amazing. When I tell you, like, I got my appointments on time, I was taken care of. When I called, they got response. So they've done a lot, and I think it's more from the government, I guess the government side of things, right? Is when we look at that veteran that maybe, again, we don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen to you. You can come with the best prepared plan that doesn't work out. Okay. And then why are those veterans homeless? It's not all their stories don't sound alike, right? It's not just all because of poor planning. I mean, look at the economy, right? We came back. First of all, no one retire, and I knew this. You don't retire overseas. That is a nightmare, to retire overseas. Just like you, I felt like I was going to be homeless if I hadn't figured it out, right? We literally had to find a house on site without even looking at the house, because having to do that overseas is not easy to do, especially when you're going through all your medical stuff, right? But I think it's looking after the veteran that is struggling and finding out why they're struggling, right? And rather than say, well, you need a plan. Yes, that's true, but it's not always that way. And it's why we see some of the things, the negative effects that we see. And the government just needs to sit down and say, hey, you know what? Okay, those veterans that are struggling, why are they struggling? I know that the budget is straining sometimes when you have those must pay benefits, that we enjoy. But I think there's a way, there's always a way. I don't know what the solution is, but I'm so grateful for the organizations that are out there, those veteran organizations that are out there. They are doing the work. When I worked on with legislation, I saw them all the time on the Hill. They have a very powerful voice, and we're grateful for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, that was a great conversation, Scott, But before I wrap it up, I'd love to ask, ask one thing, right? What advice would you give to fellow veterans who are currently transitioning to civilian life or facing challenges similar to those you've overcome? What advice would you give?
Two things. And for the people listening, we didn't script this, and I was adamant that I didn't want to know things ahead of time, because I want this to be a real conversation here. But two things that are important here. The first one, I think many people would think I would say network. I'm not going to say that first. I'm going to say to put yourself in an environment where you're around positive and uplifting people. Too many people find ways to have excuses and to blame others for their shortfalls. And your success will be the reflection in the mirror. It will be. And so I would say surround yourself with positive people, and to the point, and I mean that virtually and physically, right? So in social media, if you've got, crazy Aunt Sally who's always yelling and screaming about the sky is falling, you got to move on. I'm telling you, I love crazy Aunt Sally. I've got a couple of them myself, but you got to move on. And let's be frank, right?
Absolutely.
This is a frank conversation here. I had to block my own mother on Facebook. Now, I called her after. I did recently, because she had gotten a little bit nuts with politics on social media. And I said, hey, you have the freedom and the right, and God bless you. Continue to do that, Mom. I want you to know I blocked you. I'll bring you back eventually, but I had to, because I will not spend moments around negative people at all, regardless of who they are, blood or friends. So I think being around positive people that have interests like you, that's instantly going to be that rising tide lifting all boats. It's going to put you in the environment of positivity. And so whether those are business leaders, athletes, intellectuals, whatever, positive people, I think that is so important and so understated and underrated. I have found more and more, the more I put myself around wise people that are going to challenge me, that are going to push me to do more, good Lord, it just becomes more and more fruit for me as well. So that would be number one. Number two is literally, I talked about the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. The key to that is the network and how to build that network. Here's an example. I got a call as I was on uniform still from a car company. They do, I'm not going to use their name, but they great company. They gave me a call and they said, hey, we'd love to hire you or talk to you about an opportunity. And listen, I do maintenance on my car via the ways most people do. That's via credit card. Someone else is going to do it for me because I lift up that hood now and I don't know what's going on underneath there, right? I could probably do the oil. I certainly could change the tires, but it's just, I don't know what's going on anymore. So I don't know a lot about cars. And when I got that call, I thought, why would I accept this job that I don't know what they're going to offer? I took the call anyways, which is what every veteran should do. And I realized they were offering me an opportunity to be the director of cybersecurity for their corporate headquarters, which I turned down. However, it was a lucrative and a great opportunity there. So networking, you don't know what is around the corner. You don't know what is next until you build a network and offer them, hey, this is what I'm interested in. Here's my skill sets. Can you tell me what a day in the life of is someone at your job, whether that's, a consulting company, running a restaurant, you name it. But that network is incredible. And the network doesn't have to just be for you, right? So Dee Dee, for example, if I got a call and someone said, hey, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z, I could say, thank you for that opportunity. It's not something I'm interested in exactly, but I can pivot it over to you and say, are you interested? And I did that literally yesterday. I talked to two colonels about a thing. I was asked to come speak out in Poland and the timing doesn't work. And it was specific to a thing that these two gentlemen were doing. So I called them both and passed it on to them. And that's what we got to do. And I do this all the time. I do it all the time to help out because that's what we got to do. So positive people and networking, focus on those. The other things are important, but I think those are the keys to success in this world, whether you're going to take on a government position, your own company, or just surf every day, whatever the case may be. And at the end of the day, who doesn't want to be around positive people? Who wants to be around negative Nancy anyway?
Especially when you've retired, your mental space, I always said, is probably my priority right now, right? It's my priority. Scott, I can't thank you so much for sharing your story and your insights with me today. Your experiences are definitely, I follow you. They're valuable lessons and inspiration. I know I've learned even just in this hour and a half. When I asked you to come on, I told you, I said, I'm not going to make it timed. I didn't want to do an hour. I wanted us to kind of talk organically, just like you said. It wasn't any pre-planned. You didn't know what I was going to ask. I know I've learned a lot from our conversation. And for the listeners who want to learn more or connect with you, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. Pretty easy to find. All of my social media is like on Facebook or Instagram. I'm certified on there, and Twitter or X if they were looking for me there. The easiest way, though, is to go to s2stalkersolutions.com and go to my website, and then it has all of that other stuff as well. But most people will find me on LinkedIn. Pretty easy to find, and send me a message. Let's connect. Let's talk. How can I help you as a veteran? Or if you want to talk business or something in between, let me know, and would love to have that conversation. But Dee Dee, again, thank you for doing this. Congratulations on doing your first episode, which was remarkable. This was fun. This was enjoyable. It was a conversation, not an interrogation. At least that's what I felt like. And I'm looking forward to celebrating your success because I know how successful you're going to be. Because you're going to stay aggressive with this and learn from it and continue to improve. So thank you. And again, let me just say shout out to my Marines out there. Happy birthday, and to all the veterans that are serving,
Happy
happy Veterans Day.
Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day. I'm so grateful for the camaraderie, the family. Couldn't have, I grew up, we grew up as military. It's what we know. And so you're absolutely right. And thank you for being here again. Thanks for sharing your story. And really remember, to conclude this episode, remember the journey to finding purpose after service is filled with both challenges and opportunities. You're not alone in this process. Don't hesitate to reach out and seek support until you discover what you're looking for. Thank you for tuning in to Vetly Speaking. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. All the information from Scott I will leave on my website, vetspeakmediainc.com, and all my social handlings. It'll be on the poster. So join us next week for part 2, where we continue on the conversation of transition, but the focus will be on mental health and well-being. Until next time, take care and thank you.